I was out of my body in the white light above my car. The car was totally smashed. Where I was, it was all white light down where the car was, and my body, it was nighttime, it was dark. And then behind me, there was a big circle of white light, and within there was like a full silhouette of a being that was radiating all different shades of white light. Something happened that I was able to help people with healing. It felt so nice. There was a physical feeling, an emotional feeling, a sense of well-being. There was loving and all these nice things. Then the being behind me said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." And I knew right at that moment the father that the being was referring to was not my physical father, but God. So I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. Something happened that I was able to help people with healing. My hands became warm, and again, it was kind of discovering it over time. But the first thing that happened that made me even start to think of it was a friend of mine twisted his ankle, and I almost just instinctually reached and put my hands on it. And he felt the warmth, and he said his ankle felt better. The other thing that happened was my next door neighbor, so there was my next door neighbor, his father, and I spent years knowing these people, and then his father, so the grandfather. And the father was talking to me about his father being sick, very sick, and about to pass away. And I said to him, "I'll pray for him." And I did, and went and prayed for him, and I felt something happen. And the next time I saw the father, he said something happened, because he went that day from basically about to pass away pretty much any moment, and he was much happier and healthier and lived another few months. I mostly work on video with people, sometimes just on the phone. Well, some people have physical ailments, some people have mental or emotional ailments. Some people are really sick. There's some people that are just want to be more aware spiritually. Part of it is clearing blocks or negative things that are in the spirit. There's some clearing patterns that started in other lifetimes. Usually there's some of that goes on. There's part of it of kind of seeing where the person's path is, kind of, and talking to them and getting them to open up to allow the spiritual energy to come into that to move. Sometimes it is just kind of holding this energy there and talking to them, somewhat related to what their issue is, but more kind of distract their minds so they can let the spirit in. I do house clearings also. She asked me if I could do house clearings, and I said yes, and she said she has 2 houses. And then she kept saying, do you need the address? I said, no, I don't, but she kept asking like she needed for me to have the addresses. And it ended up being good, because as soon as she told me the first address, this purple light, this ball of purple light showed up there. And it was like, wow, and I could see the house was clear, and I didn't really have to understand too much at all. A cool thing happened. She got an offer the next day for that house, and it sold. What I didn't know at the time, and I found out some months later, those people were trying to sell that house for like 7 years on and off and weren't able to sell it. The other house she asked me to clear, I was kind of, it takes time sometimes, and it's almost like meditating on the place, and it wasn't quite jiving, and I couldn't get it to be the way I'd like to see what it looks like energetically. And I said, I think I need to go see the house because it's not quite clicking. And then I went there, and as soon as I went down the street, I could see that house had too much energy around it compared to the neighborhood. And that was interesting because, and then there was also something that the builder kind of was too attached to owning the house. So I was able to do something to tone the energy down a bit. And then I said, you got to just give him a little bit of money, like as a down payment towards the house. So he's letting go of it. And then shortly after that, it sold. But the first one, I didn't need to really know very much about at all. The second one, I needed more information. So that's similar to working with people. Sometimes you need more information. I charge $300 an hour. It's really like them, then it's like them fixing themselves. Like you might pay someone to paint your house, and then it's you painting your house. Sometimes I do houses, and they're these negative beings around the house. Sometimes it's just something out of line with the energy of the earth. There was this one house I did, and everything at the house was kind of fine, but all the accesses to the house were mucked up energetically. So basically, anytime someone came to look at the house, by the time they got there, they were just kind of drained and felt terrible. So I decided I'd put this big tube of energy there, so when they got to the house, they felt better. There's so many variables. One is, it could be when the house is built, it could be something in the earth. The idea is to get the energy moving there, and then if it doesn't move, then you look, well, what could be blocking it? Then sometimes when we define something, it gives us a certain authority over it, and you ask for the light to focus on that, to clear that up. Sometimes there's, people who have passed and they don't want to leave where they lived. And so you got to hook them up with someone to, bring them to the next level spiritually. Jesus is probably the go-to guy, but it could be other, Buddha or other, I call them saints. Some people complain about that because they're not labeled saints in the, Catholic religion, but they're people that can help, in the Hindi religion, the teachers, when they pass on, they're in the spirit there and they can help us. So it depends on the person's, a lot of times it is one of the saints from the religion they were born, or it could be something they had an affinity towards later on. My website is lawrencebrock.com. You can text me or send me a message on WhatsApp at 732-567-6388, and it is in the U.S., so +1 at the beginning for the country code.